If you're not watching adventurers who don't believe in humanity, you are missing out on one gem of a show. And I'm not exaggerating when I say this, this is truly how I feel about this show. It is criminally underappreciated. The scores that this show gets on anime tracking sites, it should be a crime, because maybe the production isn't the sharpest thing around. The characters, the story, the wonderful VAs more than make up for any shortcomings the visuals might have at times, because this episode we get a mentally abusive, manipulative storyline on our favorite idol, AGATE, who has basically done some wild things. She eats squid ice cream, doesn't matter if it exists in our own world, it is weird nonetheless to me. We have last week where Tony, aka Donnie, I don't know, the subs are changing it on me so it's hard to keep track. All I know is the dude's scum. Last episode ran over his girl after just completely screwing her over. And we get the full context of just what type of person he is, and he is a scumbag. He absolutely is. You have this kind of like gambling plotline where maybe deep down inside he truly is a decent guy, but the way he treated her and used her money, used her fame, also he could continue gambling and just use her as a source of funds. She truly loved him deep down inside and saw something probably many people wouldn't see, and as someone who's seen very similar situations from family and friends where just unfortunately the dude the girl's with is just, he's manipulative, even if maybe he started out decent, he just became too far gone. So it hit a little close to home this episode to see someone just portrayed in an anime that normally with these fantasy shows you look at and say, oh, they're just going to go kill a demon king, or they're not going to really take, mentally, physically, all these different types of abuses, and that's really what it is. Someone who is using his girl ultimately to fund his addiction, and to see how she never gave up on him, but how quickly he would give up on her. It hits different, and this show is truly one of a kind. Now, before we jump any further, gotta make a mention, we got that full live reaction available on my Patreon, so if you want to see my full thoughts as everything's unfolding in today's episode, which was definitely one of the most fun to talk about while watching, head on over there and consider supporting, because this show is an absolute gem in my opinion. I thought we would focus on one of the other two in our main crew, who hasn't gotten maybe as much development as someone like Nick, or even our favorite Dragon Girl Current, right? So the fact that she comes in, and this idol who's been around since the very beginning, she's literally the one who fueled his idol addiction. She gave him a ticket, and that's what sparked everything. And to kick an episode off where she's more or less wondering, did she do something wrong? Because for him, after getting that, he's always in the crowd, he's always cheering, and it can look like an addiction itself. Like, is he wasting his money going to these idol concerts? Did she ruin his life? And when you see the full picture of what happened in this episode and how she's literally seen firsthand addiction to gambling, she doesn't want to ruin someone else's life because she knows what that can do to people. But the fact that for someone like Nick, after literally reaching his lowest, that's something that picked him back up. Everyone has that vice. Sometimes our vices are bad for us, and other times they can be just something that's entertainment. I use video games. It's a great escape. It's honestly relatively cheap compared to what people do with gambling, drinking, smoking, and the like. So for him, partying at an idol concert, that's literally his happiness. And I love how that's used as the intro to the episode to then transition into all the other things we get to experience in this week. I think when you look at a character like him, I'm not saying he's the worst guy of all time, but I think he is a scumbag. He absolutely is. I think he was last week. He literally, a good boyfriend, a good friend. You don't even need to be in a romantic relationship. Yes, if a rhino is coming in charging, most people are going to be running for their life. But the fact that he literally pushed her and ran her over and then was trying to climb out a window, and it wasn't until basically he realized he couldn't escape that he then kind of looked like he was trying to protect her, that alone was enough to make him an absolute scumlord. But the fact that we get to see so she started out singing at like a bar, right? That's how most people start out. And the only people that would listen were more or less drunken buffoons. And then Mr. Monopoly comes in and offers her a gig as an idol. And the fact that almost immediately you just see him being like, oh, I can use her for this. And the fact that almost immediately after she gets her first big payday, hey, loan me the money, it'll be a one-time thing. People like to make the argument, how could someone be so stupid? But when you love someone, you ignore their flaws. Everyone has that part within them. It's just a matter of if they get into a situation that allows that part to be manipulated. No one's above it, as much as some people like to claim they are. Everyone is human, and humans can make mistakes. But the person to blame here is not her, it is him. He was someone who he had an addiction. Literally in the parting scenes when more or less a restraining order is dropped, This is basically what it is. It's the restraining order of this world. So you have Mr. Monopoly, I forget his name, and I'm just going to call him Mr. Monopoly because honestly he's one monocle away from being Mr. Monopoly in my opinion. He pretty much is shaking him down, acting like a big tough guy. Shortly after that scene, he's more or less saying, I hope I never have to do that again, showing he's actually kind of a softie deep down inside. But he says like, hey, you're never to associate with my idol again. If you see her on the street, coincidentally, act like you don't know her. And more or less immediately, he's pretty much like throwing it in her face like, you're the issue, you're a failure, you don't understand that gambling, the difference between me and you is I don't stop till I win. Like, when someone's that addicted, like when an addict literally thinks that they've won because they are wasting their life throwing it at a dream like that, they are too far gone. Can he get help and succeed again? Maybe he'll get that second chance, yes, and that's great if he does. But similar to how like a character like Nick and all these characters have dealt with different types of abuses or manipulations, they don't have to forgive them. They don't ever have to associate with them again, even if they change their lives. And I think it's the exact same for someone like her. And sometimes people do go back to those people, and sometimes they literally do change, but more often than not, they don't, and the same issues repeat themselves. And I hope for her sake she doesn't get into that same cycle, because I love how early into this episode you see her try to call over a dog, the dog runs away, and then a storm comes. But by the end of the episode, she does the same thing after finally being free, it feels like, and the dog comes over and she feels happy. For a show that could easily just be a simple, goofy, badass, like, oh, look at this action scene, they're fusing like Power Rangers, they're kicking some butt, or you just have some very simplistic fantasy adventure, you kind of have all that, but the thing that makes this amazing is the character writing. The character writing is some of the best I've seen in this type of show, truly since The Faraway Paladin. And that's the only show I can really compare to that took something that I thought was so basic, but turned it into something completely unique and different. Obviously, this show won't be for everyone, and that's perfectly fine, but I think anyone who tries to say it's average or just slightly above average, well, maybe you can make the argument, and probably should make the argument on production side, sure. But if you look at all of the factors of what makes an anime, this anime doesn't look ugly. It may look average at times or below average at times, and in certain cases, like the background art, like the trees, look exceptional. But if people just judge production and that's how they like write shows off, well, I understand if you visually don't like looking at something, obviously it's hard to watch. But I feel like there's a decent group that literally are underselling how good the character writing actually is. Sometimes it is silly, sometimes it is ridiculous, but the core heart and theme of what makes this show and this group of characters who fell but picked themselves back up is truly one of a kind, and no one can convince me otherwise. We're now 2/3 of the way through this show, and I love every minute of it. I love watching it every single week, and it is going to be a shame when it does come to an end. But thoughts and feelings yourself down below. What did you think of this idol-focused episode, and what was your favorite part if you do have one? Do let me know down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, ring that bell so you can get notified when I upload on the channel, and of course, as I mentioned, I have that full live reaction available on my Patreon. And while you're there, you can also get yourself a video shoutout. So today, we have Brian, Markel Thomas, and Don Nguyen. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care and have a good one.